if you're on this call, you do have power, and that your sidewalks and driveways are shoveled so you can get out if you need to. I am Amy Buckite. I am the hostess this evening for our conversation with Dick Beaubien, our Triangle Building and Housing Corporation chairman. Excited to have everyone here tonight. This is going to be just a very kind of casual conversation with Dick and our TBHC friends. We have Executive Director Mike Fouts on the line. I see there's another Triangle Building Housing Corporation trustee, Jim Marshall, on the phone. James Collar, who is also involved with the Triangle Building and Housing Corporation with the Property Improvement Contest, the PIC. And so I just wanted this to be kind of an informal conversation amongst our group. I have some questions for Dick that I'd like to ask him. And if you have questions, please type them up in the chat or on Facebook, type them in the comment section. Carrie Lovelace, our Director of Alumni Engagement and Stewardship, is going to be keeping an eye on that and reading them to us as they come in. So without any further ado, Dick and I are going to get started. And Dick, I would love for you to just do a quick introduction of who you are and how you got into this crazy building and housing group and your experience with Triangle.
Who am I? Well, that's a complicated question. I should be retired, but I'm still doing consulting engineering with my own company in traffic engineering issues. I served on a national council once upon a time. Even got to be national president once upon a time. And somehow the Building Loan Fund was looking for some other people to join them. So I got appointed to the Triangle Building Loan Fund as Assistant Secretary Treasurer. So I got to work with Harold Kennedy and figure out how you make loans to do improvements to housing. So Building Loan Fund at that time was doing loans to either build or remodel a chapter house. And the loans went to alumni organizations that owned a house or wanted to own a house. And that assumed that they sort of had their act together and they knew what they wanted to do and they have a house in mind that to do something with. So the Building Loan Fund idea was, well, we're going to do a second mortgage so that you can go to the bank and say, I've already got 25% of the purchase price in hand, and this group's willing to take a second mortgage. And so all you have to do is loan 75% of this, makes it an easy decision. And that worked well for many years. Later on, just a few years ago, we decided that we needed to be more comprehensive and to do more things. So we can still make loans to do fraternity house or remodel house. But we also have the ability to do property management and even take ownership of the house, if that's the right answer. So we imagined this we've been reluctant to get into property management because that meant you need to have someone on site keeping track of things. How do you manage property from a distance? And sororities do that, but fraternities not so much. So we're concerned about, how do we keep track of this property and all the needs that come up. We're managing a house and something goes wrong, and how do you fix it? We eventually concluded that we could hire a superintendent type person be on site, on call to answer all those questions. And alumni organizations at the local level that owned the house tended to have officers that lasted a long time. I remember Art Gast was treasurer of the Cincinnati chapter for decades, and he got tired of it. So this business about taking over some of the property management seemed to be, it's more popular than we expected it was going to be. Hope I'm not getting too far off track here.
It is your show, Mr. Beaubien. So you are free to talk about whatever you would like about the Triangle Building and Housing Corporation.
So we have found out that this service to alumni organizations was more popular than we imagined it would be. Of course, we had Mike Fouts as a new addition to the galaxy here. We have the executive director now. We didn't have that before. An employee. This is all volunteer stuff before. So we had an employee with Mike Fouts. And because this property management stuff requires a lot of bookkeeping, and we actually for the chapters that we manage, we're doing the billing of the undergraduates. So we have now on staff a CPA in the office. So having staff is a new thing for us. Fortunately, Mike Fouts and CPA lady are in the national office. They're sitting next to the Education Foundation and the Triangle Executive Director and his staff, so that they talk to each other. What a concept. And share ideas and find out where they have things in common. So we like that part.
Yes, that office synergy I think is really important. Dick, I think this is the first question a lot of people are going to have is how do you guys get your funding? I think that's the $1 million question I think everyone's here to find out the answer for.
Well, we can't print the money. Only the federal government can do that. So this started with loans from triangles. So we call it debentures. It's like a bond. So we say, loan us some money. We're going to pay this amount of interest over a 5-year period or whatever it is. And we gathered the money that way. There was, upon a time, was a permanent fund for the Triangle fraternity. And that permanent fund, that contributed to, well, you contributed to that when you were initiated. But the interest for that permanent fund used to go to the Triangle Building Loan Fund. So that interest from the permanent fund came to us, get that started. Later on, that permanent fund got transferred to the Triangle Education Foundation. So that source of funding for us was gone. So we have this money to loan out, collect interest on that. And we try to figure out how we can make the money coming in be more than money going out. So it's been selling debentures and making investments with the money that we have. So those two things have given us a kind of a bankroll to go out and improve houses. For property management, when we do property management, we do a monthly fee or a fee to do that. So that's another source of revenue. We don't.
Oh,
We're not public charity. So the money you give to us is not tax deductible. That money, that tax deductible money goes to the Education Foundation.
correct. That leads right into my next two questions, Dick. How many houses does the TBHC own? And then how many do you manage?
We own 3. They are at Oklahoma, Michigan State, and Michigan Tech. And we manage those. And we also manage properties at Michigan and Purdue. Interestingly, both Purdue and Michigan have a history of strong chapters and well-managed chapters. But they decided they had enough of this, and they thought maybe we could help them, and it turns out that we could. So James Collar is on the line. He was part of that decision to get TBHC into the management business.
Yeah, James, yeah. I'd love to hear from you about what it's like having the TBHC manage your house versus local alumni managing your house.
Yeah, I gotta say, it makes it a lot easier to be on the alumni board when you're not also trying to be a landlord, not all the time. TBHC, we were one of their first clients to come manage the Michigan House. And a large part was because as a volunteer organization, we didn't have time to be running the day-to-day operations of running a house of 50 men. Between trying to track down contractors, trying to get all the bills paid, trying to get in and do all the everyday repairs, it was just too much for our alumni organization to do. We were burning out alumni members left and right on our board. The turnover was really high because nobody wanted to go through and actually run the house. We wanted to work with the undergrads. We wanted to mentor them. And so it was a really easy decision when the opportunity presented itself for TBHC to step in and do a lot of the day-to-day management. Now they manage our bank accounts, they pay our bills, they make sure our contractors are selected, they get the job done, they manage our leasing. So in a lot of ways, they took a lot of the burdens off of our alumni group so we could focus on mentoring the undergrads and giving them direction in terms of how we wanted our pricing structure, how we wanted our leases written. So they could just step in and do the day-to-day management. And it's made a huge impact on us.
How does that, how do the undergraduates perceive having the TBHC manage them? As Dick had said, someone who's kind of out of town versus you guys, the alumni board that are there in Ann Arbor that can, take the phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning when the pipe bursts.
Well, we have 2 areas for that. One, we do have a local on-site property superintendent who was hired by TBHC to work specifically with our chapter house. So anytime there is a 2 o'clock in the morning pipe burst, I no longer have to be the one to get that phone call. It can go straight to our property superintendent and I'll wake up to a text message. Oh, by the way, this happened. But that's great for me to be able to, they can just go straight to that person. We still have somebody on site in Ann Arbor representing both the alumni board and TBHC to get the property the care it needs anytime something happens like that. But outside of that, Mike and the entire staff are fantastic and responsive. So I don't think we've ever had issues with our undergraduates not being able to get a hold of Mike or Denise or anybody else on TBHC staff to get issues resolved when they come up.
That is great to hear. I think that gives peace of mind to your alumni board and to your chapters that there is somebody a professional who's doing it. It's not 18 to 22-year-olds looking at this pipe going, now what do we do, right?
I remember those days.
Which I think is everyone's nightmare, right? Oh my gosh, they're gonna fix it Saturday with a trip to Walmart in the middle of the night.
You mentioned that, and it's funny because right before we hired TBHC, we did have a pipe burst when I was inactive, and it was one of our heating pipes that burst during the winter. And so 1, you have water going everywhere. 2, you're now losing heat to the house in the middle of winter. And sure enough, we were making runs to Walmart at 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to find different ways to try to get this pipe leak under control while trying also not to burn our hands on this scalding radiator water. And it was an experience. And yeah, we hired TBHC about 6 months later.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Yes, smart decision. I would love you guys to just kind of talk about Dick from a board member standpoint, and then James from a client standpoint. What do you think the biggest misconceptions about the Building and Housing Corporation are?
Well, I think one of them has to do with that we want to own the house. We don't necessarily want to own a house. In fact, we kind of get dragged kicking and streaming into ownership because of this concern about property management from a distance. So we're going to work with the alumni group. We are a service to alumni groups, and we're going to decide, help them work through what do you need from us, what kind of help do you need, and ownership is not always the right answer. And so we own Oklahoma because we bought the house at an auction. Believe it or not. What a great deal. And there's a property next to it, and you can expand. Yeah. So it took, well, that's a long story, and it turns out we had to go to the Oklahoma Supreme Court to get the right to occupy that property as a fraternity. Long story there. Anyway, Michigan State, that was a decision by the alumni group that they didn't want to deal with us anymore, and they wanted us to fix lots of things. So I don't know what the total amount we put into that chapter was, about $300,000 to bring it up to where it needed to be safe. So they decided that they wanted us to own it and take care of it and put the money into it to bring it up to where it needed to be. Michigan Tech was another case where the alumni group decided that I think the deciding thing for them was that it's going to cost them less the rent was going to be less if we owned it than if they owned it. So it was a cost analysis for them, I think.
You touched. Sorry. Go ahead.
But I guess that's a misconception. We don't necessarily want to own the house, and we don't measure our success by number of houses we own.
You said safety. We made the house safe. What does that mean to make it safe?
Well, it might mean a sprinkler system for fire service. And fire access is one of the big points to keep in mind. There's a insurance company that the fraternity works with that kind of outlines all the issues with each of the houses that they insure, and use that kind of a guideline to take a look at things that need to be addressed in the house and what we need to do to make it a safe place to live.
And how do you, I can see chapters being really nervous about safety things. How do you explain that to them, that you're not going to put in that new foosball table, you're going to put in new sprinklers? How do you sell, so to speak, the chapter on that?
I don't think it's hard to sell the safety at all. The question is, how do we pay for it? And so, and when do we do it, and how do we pay for it? So some cases it's not easy to retrofit that system in. So I don't safety is not a hard sell.
If there's a chapter house that needs some safety issues that you don't currently own or manage, how do you help them get those life-saving things in their house?
We have to be invited.
You have to be invited.
So we know there are some houses in Triangle that needs some big help, and we have to be invited to do that.
Dick, I have kind of a question. Do you have a feel for how many of our chapter houses have sprinklers and how many don't? Do you have a feel for that?
Mike Fouts probably has the answer to that question.
Mike, we defer to you.
Yeah, so right now I think we're about 40-ish% sprinkled. I think that's what it is. We get the, obviously we have, as Dick mentioned, we have the insurance favor program where we get the house inspections every 3 years. And part of that is recommendations on making fixes, and then you earn discounts on your insurance premium cost based on making the house more safe. It's about 40-ish%. And keep in mind,
Okay.
we don't have all the houses in the record because there are a lot of groups that have unofficial houses. So we have a lot of members living together in facilities that aren't really recognized as Triangle facilities. But in the ones we recognize, it's 40-ish%. I'd have to pull
Okay.
up the documents and give you an exact number, Brad, but it's in
No,
that
that's
neighborhood.
fine.
I think I hear you talk about the safety, Dick, and how that's something that's really important to you guys. And you're just so proud of it. What is a housing situation that you are particularly proud of that the TBHC has helped handle and or navigate?
Well, certainly Oklahoma, we've done a lot of things with Oklahoma to make that better and safer. And we put a lot of money into that, and probably will never get the money out of it. Oklahoma's, and Mike Fouts gets a lot of credit for working with that group to bring them in the fold and get them organized so that they're paying enough rent to keep the house going. The other one, I guess, recently we helped finance the Iowa State chapter house purchase. This was a case where we needed to come up with, there were several other, this is a house worth $4.5 million. Probably the crown jewel of Triangle fraternity houses right now. Houses something like 50 men. So we were competing with other fraternities to get this when it came on the market. We had 30 days to come up with over $4 million to get this house. So we have a line of credit at our financial institution. It was good for about $2.5 million. And there was another $1 million or so that we raised from Iowa State alumni, and then there was another $1 million we borrowed from the Triangle Education Foundation. So we put that financing package together in 30 days. You know, not enough time to get a mortgage. Now I think Iowa State 2 years later does have a mortgage on the property, and some of the money that we had there has been released to do other things. But putting that package together and getting all of Triangle to work to bring that financing together for a really beautiful house, that was a great accomplishment for the whole fraternity.
Absolutely. You can't even get a conventional mortgage for in 30 days. Ask me. I just moved into a house in December. Ask me how I know that. That's phenomenal. How did that happen? Was it just open lines of communication? Was it honesty and transparency about what everybody needed to get out of this, deal, so to speak, to make it work? Can you share a little more details about that? Because I think that is a fascinating story.
Well, of course, you called Jim Marshall, our secretary treasurer, who does our financial genius stuff. And so he talked to the alumni group and found out what they needed and when they needed it. And then we went to work to find the money.
In 30 days.
Yeah, in 30 days. Yeah.
That's amazing. I know that there are some people that have questions that are in the chat. I know Carrie is monitoring that to circle back around on those at the end. So I don't want you to feel like we have forgotten you. I promise we're going to get to those at the end. I just have really just two more questions for you, Dick, and then I'll just kind of open it up and let you share if there's something that we didn't quite cover during our conversation here. You touched on, and so did James Collar, about alumni groups. How do you guys work with alumni groups? Because typically you think of undergraduates living in the house, and so you're serving the undergraduates, but really, I don't think you are serving the undergraduates.
No, we're serving the alumni. And so we try to, we have Carrie on board now, so she's connecting us with alumni groups, right? So we try to meet them at convention or wherever we can and find out who's in charge and develop relationships with the alumni groups so that we have this conversation going and they can ask the question, we could figure out how we can help them. But we're all about alumni and alumni relations, and that's why we have Carrie.
If I could add to that, if you were to sum up the relationship between TBHC and at least the Michigan Alumni Organization, in one word, it would be collaborative. TBHC does not dictate to us how they want to run the house, and we don't necessarily dictate to them either. We really work together to find a solution that fits our needs and matches the model in which they want to run. So for example, we don't use TBHC's lease that they use at their own properties. We still use our own lease that we developed that fits the needs of the Michigan chapter, and TBHC then administers that. We still set rent. So the alumni group, at least within Michigan, I know with a lot of other chapters, we still maintain control of the property, especially since we still own our property and TBHC just manages it. And so there's a lot of collaboration that goes on there between our alumni board and Mike, in terms of how do we want to best manage it? What do we want to do? What's the vision that we have as the alumni for this house?
And as you said earlier, James, that makes your alumni advisory experience much more enriching, that if you don't have to worry about all of those things.
Don't get me wrong, we still have a lot of work that we do from within the alumni board to keep, the management going. And it pretty much is a full-time alumni board position to work with TBHC. So it's not like we just dropped everything and said, TBHC, run the house. Because we do work together and, we're still, again, it's the collaborative part.
So they really customized a solution that was specific to Michigan to make it work for Michigan.
Exactly.
It wasn't just a one size fits all, take it or leave it proposition.
Exactly.
That's great.
Here's the menu. Pick out what you like. Right.
I think that's a huge misconception, is that people think, oh, the TBHC has one lease, one contractor, one everything, and this is what you have to do. But it's really not, because every chapter is different, and we need to work to find solutions to make that chapter successful.
Exactly. When we talk about.
I was wondering when a dog or a child was going to make an appearance. My kids just got, my husband, Andrew, who a lot of you know, and my kids just got home. So I'm like, oh, I'm just waiting for my kids to bust in on our conversation tonight.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of, when we were talking about life safety earlier and recommendations working with together, when the annual inspections come through and they give recommendations for how to improve life safety, we work with TBHC and Mike to prioritize that list. What do we have the budget for this year? What do we have the budget for in 2 years and 5 years? And so for one example is the Michigan chapter is not yet fire sprinkled, but it's one of the things that we've been planning for several years now and are finally getting ready to be able to implement. So they've really helped us with the long-term planning too, in terms of where do we want to go with the house? How do we get there?
as I'm thinking about this as a parent now myself with young kids that will hopefully go to college and join a Greek organization, how do you guys work with parents who are concerned maybe about their son living in a fraternity house, especially one that may not have all the safety features, but you guys are planning to install them, because I imagine it's not, run to the Ace Hardware and buy the $12.99 smoke detector and slap it on the ceiling, right?
Yeah, I might chime in on that. If the call doesn't go to alumni like James's group or any alumni board, or it gets filtered through them back to me for something specific, then it's mostly just a conversation. Most of them just feel like they don't have any information because their kids don't tell them anything. And so it's usually, more often than not, it's just explaining how a process works, how something physically happens, a move in, a move out, damage to deposits, what the timeline. It's really more often than not when I haven't had a lot of parent discussions because we just don't get a lot of problems, knock on wood. But the dog. But when we do, it's usually just explaining how something works, or to define some piece of our infrastructure. It's very rarely a complaint.
I had the experience with one of the undergrads at Michigan because I knew his mother. She's on the faculty at Michigan, and I work with her on some intelligent transportation system things. So I can tell you that she's very pleased that her son is in Triangle Fraternity and thinks it's been a real plus for him. And she keeps trying to prod me to tell her what the secret handshake is. Well, she's not going to get that, but she's really pleased that that's been the right thing for her son.
I think to add to it too, the nice part about having TBHC on board is that when parents do have questions, concerns, a problem with billing, anything, they can go directly to a professional staff. If they email some of the alumni board, we may or may not see it for a few days, may not have time to respond to it for a few days. They pick up the phone, or they email Mike, he's responding almost immediately. So it's nice to have professional staff supporting us in ways that the alumni board may not necessarily have the time to be able to keep up with. And I think that just adds a nice layer for our parents too, to know that if they have an issue, there's a professional there that they can call, not a 19-year-old, not a random engineer who may or may not have time to deal with it.
Yes, back to that middle of the night bursting pipe, right? My son just called me in a panic. What do we do? Well, that is that leads into another question that I had. You were talking about it's TBHC. It's an incentive for chapters to work with you guys with that professional staff and that professional management. For chapters that don't work with you guys or maybe on the fence about it, what kind of incentives do you have for them to make their house safe, to make improvements to their house, to come and work with you guys? What things are out there to kind of sway them to say, yes, we want to work with the TBHC?
Well, we have an awards. We do an annual award for house improvements. So let's see. I don't know, Mike Fox or James might do a better job of explaining that one to me.
There's also a series of discounts for working with TBHC. If you're in our managed property program, there's a discount on I know there's a discount on the property. There may also be a discount on your liability insurance. The fraternity manages that process, so they know a little bit more about it than I do. But there are some discounts for being on our program because, again, knock on wood, we tend to have less behavior issues, less damage, less at our properties. And again, that goes back to what James was talking about, which is you're getting professional management. So we tend to run I hate the term tighter ship, but just a more efficient, more regulated, there isn't so much anxiety about stuff, and anxiety breeds problems. So when we're involved, there's a lot less anxiety on alumni part, undergraduates part. The thing just tends to run a little bit more because it's, again, back to the professionalism. I mean, if you're working 40 hours a week and you got a wife and 3 kids, or you're trying to get your kids through college or whatever, and you're doing this part-time, that's a lot. I am literally paid. I am employed to do this job. I have 20 years of experience doing this job. So for me to do the job, I have a much higher success rate than somebody who's doing it as their part-time thing.
To add to both what Mike just said, and then to answer the original question, in terms of reducing anxiety, if I think back to the start of COVID, when we were all running around, where do we find hand sanitizer? Where do we find masks? Where do we find gloves? All that good PPE that nobody seemed to have. Mike was sitting there calling us, hey, how much do you want? Not, do you need us to find it? It was already, I found it, how much does the chapter need? So having somebody to come up with solutions like that, that is a huge relief in terms of trying to help us manage and maintain the chapter. In terms of incentivizing and providing support, I'm also the chairman of the Property Improvement Contest Committee, the PIC, and we have $10,000 annually awarded to chapters. Each chapter can apply just through a simple Google form, set its proposal. What do they want to do? Do they want to fix up a study room? Do they want to fix up a game room? It doesn't have to be educational related. If they don't have a house, they want to plant a community garden. If they are doing life safety updates, that's a huge part of it as well. So we give them grants of up to $1,000 per application, and there's no limit on how many times a chapter can apply throughout the year. We've had some chapters that have applied 3-4 times throughout the year and gotten several $1,000s. At the end of the year, we basically take however much money we already awarded, and with the remaining up to that 10,000, we then award that to our top 3 chapters who did the most best projects, and they get additional cash incentive to then go forth and do their next big project.
That's great. What are some of the things that the chapters are doing with their with the improvements?
We've had a pretty wide range of property improvements in the last couple of years. Everything from installing new fencing, replacing emergency escape doors that were no longer weather tight, repainting and reflooring their living rooms. The most recent one, Toledo just had a fantastic project where a brother made some amazing looking coffee tables that had the Delta T epoxied into them. So, I mean, it's really been a wide breadth of projects: bathrooms, bedrooms, living rooms, kitchens. I mean, I think every single room in a chapter house has been improved under a PIC grant at this point.
I would add that my all-time favorite project was actually at Armor. They did a beautification project in their entryway around this massive fish tank they have. They redid the floor and the walls and the cabinet around it, and it just was stunning. And I thought, how creative. And it was around a fish tank, and we awarded for that. I think they even won the grand prize that year for that project. It was a gorgeous, and they did it themselves. It was really nice.
Mike, I had a question. One of the things at Nebraska they brought up that we're thinking about is converting our fluorescent lights in our bedrooms to LEDs. Is that something that you mentioned? Would that be possible to get a grant for part of that, or?
I would defer to James because he's the chairman, but I believe that's an easy one.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, just have them
Okay.
apply to it. Again, we award up to $1,000. We do it on a rake system. Essentially, if you have alumni support, if you have a lot of the actives taking part in it, you don't have a third party working on it, and it's going to improve the overall amenities or life safety or community around the chapter house, then that gets you the most money towards your grant.
Of course, the utility company might also kick in a little bit for that too, possibly.
Yep.
That is the end of all the questions that I have for you, gentlemen. I know Carrie's been keeping an eye on questions that have been coming in through the chat. Carrie, do you just want to get started with your questions? She's like, yeah, I have a lot of them, Amy.
Yeah. Mike's been popping in some comments here or there to help as the event's been rolling on. I think one thing that a lot of groups may find themselves in is similar to what Jason from Toledo mentioned, which is that property is owned by the university. So how can they foster a strong relationship with TBHC to support them in the work that they're doing, even though their property is owned by the university?
We've done some things for the Armor chapter over the years, and that's owned by the university. So it's tricky when it's owned by the university, but there's probably some things we can do. And so
Yeah, one of the best examples is Marquette. You know, Marquette's building has been owned by the university forever. And the ways we've always helped them when they were an ongoing chapter was through the property improvement contest, or I'm sorry, through the in favor insurance program that we administrate. They use that as leverage. I was actually just talking to somebody from Toledo about this, Joe maybe, that they use that program as leverage to force the university to make upgrades, life safety improvements, you know, and that's basically you can go up and go, look, it says right here, you got to fix this stuff. You don't fix it. If something goes bad, we can sue you. So the university has no choice. And so, and we can often also be a go-between. I have been the person when the alumni or the actives haven't felt comfortable talking to like the director of residence life, which is a job I used to have years ago. I can call those people up and have a conversation and often be the mediator. So even if you don't own your house, if it's owned by the university, we can be an assistant in facilitation. Consultation that leads to facilitation to help them get what they need from the university. And then we can also help them plan. And that's one of the things Toledo, we've been kind of working with Toledo on and off for years. Once they sold their house, we currently hold the profits for their house on debenture. We're paying interest on that. And we, every couple of years, revisit the idea of possibly them getting a house off campus again. So that's what we can do when you don't even own your own house. Those are some of the ways in which we can help.
And then not really a question because Mike came in and gave a good explanation here, but just knowing that Mike is a resource if you're looking for just a consultation, just an opportunity to chat about what your housing situation is and see the services that TBHC can provide. So knowing that Mike is an easy to go resource, like he said, he's a professional staff member. So utilizing him as a resource as often as you need, especially if you have some very entry level questions about how the TBHC can really support a group, no matter what your housing situation is. If you're owned by the university or you have a board, a local corporation that supports the group.
Yeah, Scott Bova to the other day made an interesting comment that I never really considered to me the other day, because we're currently working with the Illinois chapter. They're trying to do a big renovation. There's a house campaign. So we have a call every 2 weeks and I'm on that call. Scott's on that call. Aaron's on the call, basically trying to help them do the renovation. It's going to end up being probably north of $4 million to renovate the house by the time they're done. And Scott made the comment, he said, geez, if we could just get everything that's in your head out of your head and onto paper, we wouldn't need you. And I thought, you know, it was funny to me because I've got 20 plus years in here of stuff and it seems to pop out. Someone asks a question and the knowledge just comes out. But if you were to ask me, if I was to try to put it down in isolation, it doesn't really work that way. It's more like you give me a scenario or a situation or an issue and I'm like, oh, and I draw on the 17 other times I dealt with it, previously. So that's kind of what I spend most of my time doing is really just the consulting. I talk on the phone with alumni all over Triangle every day who call and just have a question about insurance or how to deal with the university, or what do we do about noise violations, or what do we do about the local municipality or inspections, municipal inspections, occupancy inspections, fire inspections, fire extinguisher. I mean, there's 1,000 things that go into operating a property that for me are just old hat. We do it every day. But for you, it might be you're a new guy on the board there and you've never dealt with it before. And you're not sure what to do. You pick up the phone and talk to me and I talk you through it. That's really what I spend a huge percentage of my time doing, is just talking triangles off the ledge they're standing on from something that's going on with their property.
Engineers are traditionally problem solvers and bring us your problems so we'll see what we can do with them.
Yes. Any other questions, Carrie, that came through? I know Mike's been kind of answering them as they've been coming up.
I think we're good right now. And I also would welcome anyone, if you just want to unmute yourself and ask your question, that you can definitely do that as well in the space, since we've got a pretty manageable group.
Sorry, Carrie, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. I thought it was supposed to be answering things over there.
I'm just here to moderate.
No, it's perfect, Mike. I think what you said is because I think people do wonder, like, how does the TBHC really help us? And like you said, how many sprinklers do we need per bed? And that's, you know, that off the top of your hand. So
How
I
do they
will
help
say
us? They come in when we have our annual or every 3-year occupancy inspection and get the contractors in to help us navigate the 10 million page list of everything that the city is going to require the house to have and make sure it's in place the first time, versus before TBHC when we would have 7 re-inspections and a list of violations that were 20 pages long.
And in Ann Arbor, that gets expensive. There's no place that charges more money for a property inspection than, as Sam Van Cleef, who's the alumni board president, puts it, the People's Republic of Ann Arbor.
And TBHC helps us manage that.
that is, and I don't think a lot of fraternities have the professional resource that we have with Mike on staff to be able to help navigate that. Is that an accurate statement, Mike?
It's getting better. I was one of only about 10 of us 10 years ago or so. I would say we've maybe doubled, even tripled that in the past 10 years. We now have myself and a couple of the guy at SAE, Drake Summers, and Rob Durger from AEPI, and a couple other people, and Pat, the guy that works the fundraiser at Patrick Alderdice. We put together a group called the Fraternal Housing Association. So we now have a national trade union, basically. It's kind of like the NIC, but for housing. We have a national trade union of all the professionals. And just in the last couple of years, the sorority people who've been doing this longer than we have, they've had professionals forever, have started to come into our group. And we actually have 2 sorority professionals on our national board right now. So it is a profession that is much younger than, say, the foundation executive or the fraternity executive. They've had their groups forever. So we're only about 5 years old, maybe not even that old, but we're growing, and we're definitely focused on housing professionals. And as time goes forward, we get more and more people who, instead of having housing as this little sliver of their job they do with 900 other things, they're starting to get housing as their single focus in their job. So the professionals who already do this are helping other groups professionalize their departments for housing. So that's maybe one of the best things we've done in the last few years.
That's awesome. Yeah, a rising tide raises all ships. And so if we're helping our fraternal friends, it's just solidifies Triangle's reputation as a leader in the.
And also, just as a note, a little glory to Triangle. I was actually the first national president of the FHA, and I held that post for 3 years. And I'm now currently the emeritus, or the immediate past president in Triangle language, the immediate past president of the fraternal.
Thank you, venerable and well respected.
Yes, we are lucky to have Mike's expertise. I would love to close on this question, and I'd love to hear from Dick as the chairman. I'd love to hear from James as a client, and Mike as the executive who runs it day to day. What is TBHC doing that's truly making our chapters better?
Well, we're taking some of the burden off the alumni so they can do other things. So we're making the improvements to the facilities or acquiring the facilities. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that we allow the alumni to do this mentoring process and to develop a social. There used to be a time when we could get together socially in this country, and maybe that time will come again. But there's a social part of this fraternity too, and so we help by taking some of this property management stuff off the table. The alumni can work on the social part, and this business. The fraternity house is a place where you really get the best fraternity experience. Living together with the guys, you develop relationships that last a lifetime. So in our last newsletter, I had a brother of mine write a story about how Triangle helped him with his professional career. And these connections keep helping you as you go along. So Triangle really is a lifetime experience.
to add to that, TBHC provides the guidance for how to run a good house. They provide the leadership so that it's efficient. I don't think we've had such efficient housing operations ever in the history of the chapter. And like Dick said, they pull the alumni board out of the housing operation business and back to the mentorship business. And that makes a huge difference on our active members and our alumni members together. And really just improves the overall quality of all members' time in Triangle.
Mike Fouts finishing us up for the night.
Triangle's a leadership laboratory. And we think that laboratory works.
The two things I would point out would,
that laboratory works best when you're living together with your brothers. It's that time in your life when you are away from your mother and you're not married and you find out who you really are, and your brothers help you to figure that out.
Mike, I think you wanted to add something.
No, I thought you asked me to wrap it up, but maybe we're talking to Dick. No, I was just going to say, our big thing has been, continues to be, will always be our biggest mission. And the way I codified it under exactly what Dick was saying, leadership laboratory is, the best thing we can do is we really do work with alumni. And our whole thing is, let's get you out of the landlord business and back into the fraternity business. Because that's really where, with our limited time schedules that everybody has these days, we need you to focus on the members, the membership. Let us take care of the facility. That's whatever that means to you, however that helps. Michigan State's a great example. Big chapter, great guys. The alumni just had zero interest or capabilities to manage the house. And Jake Hopert, who many of you know, once we took that off their plate, they might be 3 times the size where we got involved. And I've been bragging a lot lately about National President Joe Serrato's last comment, which was, everywhere TBHC is involved, the chapter gets better. And I feel very, very proud of that statement. That means more to me than almost anything, is that he said that. Everywhere we're involved, the chapter gets better.
I think that is an amazing way to end our conversation tonight. That the TBHC, truly what they touch is they're making it better. So Carrie, any more questions? Nope. I'm gonna call us done for the night, guys. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening. I'm gonna make a shameless plug for Week of Giving. I would be remiss and a terrible fundraiser if I didn't. If you have not yet made your gift, please go to triangleweekofgiving.org. We are looking for some donors. We're looking for about 68 to be exact donors to help us get to our goal for the week. We want to have 200 donors, and we'd really love to have you partner with us to keep our chapters strong for generations to come. So thank you everyone so much for your time tonight. If you have additional questions, you can email Mike. You can email me. You can give us a call. You can text us, send us a smoke signal, and we're happy to help.
Thanks for hosting the party.
Oh, happy to do it, Mr. Beaubien. Have a great night, guys.
Night.
Bye.
Night.
Bye.